what an absolutely beautiful gun, but I regret buying it. That's what we're going to talk about today, as I give you 7 guns that you will regret buying. Now, these are not necessarily bad guns. As a matter of fact, all the guns on this list are actually pretty great, but for one reason or another that we'll cover, you are going to regret buying these guns. So it may not be for the reasons that you're thinking, but I will of course explain myself, and I want to hear from y'all whether it was because a gun was bad or maybe it falls into a category of some of these others. What are some of the guns that you have regretted buying over the years? Let's go and get into it. As promised, this is the Honey Badger, and this is one you might regret buying if you're thinking AR alternative. So while yes, you look at this gun and you're like, oh my gosh, it's a cool coloration, and you know, it just has like this appeal to it, right? Where you're like, man, it looks so sexy, and you know, it's got this gold and gray and copper coloration, and you know, you've heard so much about the Honey Badger, or even like the Sugar Weasel, and you know, you're like, oh, cute, they're a cool company, and yada yada yada. And while all of that is true, there's a problem with it. If you're expecting an AR alternative, you're not necessarily going to get that. And really, it comes down to effective range. And I learned this very quickly with the Honey Badger. Now, when I sighted this in, I actually sighted it in with subsonic ammo because I want to get all the benefit of it. I mean, of course, this is one of those guns you can suppress, and I mean, it really is impressively quiet. But then when you take it out past 200 yards, the round just falls off like crazy, and it gets wildly inaccurate, at least from my testing. Now, this is out of a 7-inch gun, of course, but you really need to keep your expectations pretty much for anything 300 blackout, but especially the Honey Badger pistol, you need to keep them within reason. And under 200 yards, really inside of 100 yards. Actually, when I took this back out to the range, I sighted it in at 50 yards because I know this thing, I'm never going to take it out past that. This is a home defense gun, strictly a home defense. And when it comes to the AR, you know that they can be so much more than that. I mean, literally, you can build anything in the AR platform in any caliber that will be effective out to 1,000 yards or more. Or it could be effective at 300 and 400 yards, or it could be home defense, or it could be 22 trainer, right? So you have a gun that's worth a lot of money, and yet effectively what it's going to be good at is home defense inside of 200 yards, really inside of 100 yards primarily. That is what it's built for, and if you expect anything more, even though it is a 30 caliber round, you're going to be highly disappointed. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit more versatile, I would definitely go with the AR platform. But if you just want a really cool AR alternative that is super quiet, has the cool factor, and is an amazing home defense gun, well, then this one might be a good option for you. Next series of guns we're going to talk about is the M&P lineup. But it's not for the reasons that some of you may be thinking. This is strictly based on public opinion. I find it very interesting that a lot of people still think of Smith & Wesson as a revolver company, or the ones that know that they make semi-autos just kind of think they're like low tier, way worse than Glock copies, when there's nothing further from the truth. As a matter of fact, if you actually buy one of these guns, you may end up adding more M&Ps than your current favorite lineup, especially when you compare it to something like a Glock. Now, yes, over the years, they were hit or miss, right? With the original M&Ps, terrible triggers, talked about that before, just god awful, right? You had to buy aftermarkets if you wanted to have, you know, basically a really good shooting gun. But they've consistently gotten better over time, and to the point where my personal opinion is I will take any M&P 2.0 or higher over any Glock any day of the week. Not only are they typically cheaper, you have a lot more options too, by the way, when it comes to barrel lengths, performance center, optic cuts, sizing, calibers. There's just a lot more out there for the M&P when it comes to that stuff, but also a gun you don't have to sink a ton of money into. At least one you don't have to sink a ton of money into to get it to shoot really well. And one of the biggest upgrades that they've made over the past couple years has been their flat face trigger. It is absolutely fantastic. And the other part of it is kind of opposite of the Honey Badger because it's not seen as a cool gun or a cool pistol, even though that doesn't mean anything to some of you. Guns are cool. It is what it is, okay? And so they don't have, typically, aren't seen as like cool guns, even though I think they're freaking cool. They're innovative. This M&P 5.7 is freaking amazing. They have a lot of great designs, but when it comes to their pistols, you may regret talking so highly of Glock and all this, some of these other brands when you end up shooting one of these that are cheaper and, in my opinion, shoot much better, and they're just as reliable as Glock, which is something very important when it comes to the firearm debate, if you will. This next one is just too good. I've talked a lot about it in the past, so I'm not going to rehash everything, but it just makes other pistols seem like, okay, and then this is like next level. The thing is, you don't have to spend $2,000 or $3,000 or more to get some of the same performance that you will on higher guns. And the one I'm talking about is the CZ Shadow 2 specifically, CZ75 in general. This whole line of pistols, CZ has just become one of my favorite brands because I just like them. I don't know anybody at CZ. Nobody's paying me to do this video, by the way. This is just me simply telling you how good this platform is. Now this one right here, this is strictly like home defense or range. I don't see too many people carrying this hunk of metal around with them. And while you may not be in love with the double to single action trigger on a gun like this, especially if you're used to striker fireds, you will fall in love with this single action for sure. It is crisp, it's smooth, and that weight just helps to soak up the recoil on this gun unlike any other. And because of that innovative kind of slide design that they have, where the rails are on the inside, it doesn't ride on top of the rails, it actually helps to keep that muzzle down even more. And even the double action on this gun is really solid. Now, the other part of this too is this thing is just beautiful, right? You kind of have these scallops on top of the hammer, got a really nice fiber optic, you have these incredibly awesome and just amazing, beautiful blue grips on this gun. They have one that's like an orange series too that I really like. I think it would go great up here on the wall. And it's going to be a gun you regret because it's going to force you down the CZ rabbit hole. And it's not a cheap rabbit hole by any means. But again, they sell these things for like $1,200. Now that's not chump change, don't get me wrong. But when you compare them to higher end guns, 2011s and 1911s and some of the crazy expensive guns out there, this thing can do what they can do, and in some cases better, right? And there are optic versions ready of this gun as well now too. So incredible, man. When it comes to a gun, a fantastic, I think, 1911 alternative, this might be one of the best, if not the best one out there. Now, I love guns. I really do. I like a lot of different guns, and I'm not married to any one brand except when it comes to 22 rifles specifically. And one gun you might regret because it may ruin your perception of other good 22 rifles is the Ruger 1022. This is an easy one. I mean, this is kind of like cheating in this video because there is no other 22 out there that can provide you the type of platforms that Ruger can. At least not at the price that they can do it. From the Ruger Precision to the 1022, these things are just incredible. Ruger is known for making high quality, affordable, rimfire rifles, and this is one. And they just continue to add to the 22 lineup. So if you want something that's really traditional, right, you can absolutely have that. If you want something that's a little bit more modern, right, like this carbon fiber barrel and Magpul stock edition right here with the BX25s, you can absolutely do that. You want something even more tactical, right, or a takedown model, or again, like the Ruger Precision rifles. These things shoot well, they're accurate, they're affordable, and they have a lot of variety to them, and they are one of the, if not the most respected 22 rifle company in America. I don't even consider other brands, to be quite honest with you. When it comes to 22 rifles, what I think about is the 1022, and that's it. The other part of this too that you might regret is the money you're going to want to invest in a can for your 22. This is kind of the holdup with this one as far as the review, because I really want to get a can for this thing and actually utilize it to its fullest potential, because they're so much fun. They're so freaking quiet and just an awesome little freaking squirrel gun, target gun. And so that's kind of the holdup on it. But it's one of the few guns that I would say I run it and it's probably going to be perfect. You're going to have a little bit of finicky ammo from time to time, depending on what you run. But again, these things are known for pretty much running any and everything. I absolutely love this platform, and a lot of people do. So if you go to buy a 22 and it's anything other than a Ruger, you're probably missing out, to say the least. At least, again, at the price point they offer these things at. Now, this is a public service announcement that I've made in the past that I will continue to make, because I'm trying to save you some heartache and some money. But if you like anything to do with any kind of wartime history, don't buy military surplus. I started with a Mosin Nagant. I think my first one, or 2025, this was probably maybe 2018 now, roughly somewhere in there, maybe even 2017. I have to go back and check when I did the videos on this stuff. But I bought my first Mosin Nagant. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. You know, it's 80 years old, and who knows where this thing was. And that's a gun where 40 million of them were made. And then you start looking at more rare stuff and you're like, oh God, this stuff's expensive. It's not like the stories you're going to hear. If you talk to anybody into military surplus, they're going to tell you that they got crates of Mosins for 75 bucks each or cheaper, and then SKSs, and even your German stuff, which is so freaking expensive. It will break you if you're not careful. And I find myself, when it comes to looking at any website, I look at Legacy Collectibles more than anyone, because I just want to see what they got. And it's kind of funny because Mrs. Headshot, and this is no joke, anytime she sees me on that site, she's like, you need to get off of it, because very rarely do I actually look at it and not buy something within a couple of weeks or a month, and I'll start talking about it more and more, and I'll be like, hey, you remember that gun I showed you? Yes, this is kind of the conversation back and forth. Yes, I remember the gun. Yeah, why don't you just go ahead and buy it? That's normally how it goes. I mean, I really do love this stuff. I love the history. I love reading up and searching, how these things were made and kind of the wartime effort that went into them, and just the deep history with anything military surplus, Cold War, World War II, especially World War II. I really love that stuff. So if you want to invest and probably have a pretty good return in the future still, this might not be a bad way to go. That is not financial advice, but what I'm telling you is that this stuff seemingly just continues to go up and up and up and up, unfortunately. And so there's a finite amount of these things, really, and depending on what it is, I have a new one coming right now as we speak that I'll be sharing on the channel, unlike anything that you have ever seen on any YouTube channel, and I can promise you that it's going to be quite incredible. I mean, I'm just telling you, forewarning you, if you like anything historical and you like guns, unless you just want to spend a lot of money, you will regret buying your first military surplus, because it will lead you down a rabbit hole just like CZ, only worse. I said all the guns that we were going to cover here are good, but one thing I want to highlight is if you are considering buying a cheap 1911, while there are some out there that you can get that will kind of run reliably, just expect, generally speaking, to spend 800 to 1,000 bucks or more for a good, high quality 1911. That's just what they run. And these things require more detail, more attention to detail to get them to run really well. You need to keep them, lubed up. You need to keep an eye on the magazines. You may have to tune magazines. You need to pay attention to the type of magazines that you buy. You don't want to cheap out on the magazines. Getting used to the idea of carrying a gun cocked and locked, right? And then choosing the 1911. Do you want one like this that's a little bit more modernized? This is one of the new operators from Springfield Armory, and so you'll have to consider that. Do you want more old school? Do you want GI or Commanders or optic cuts, no optic cuts? What kind of grips do you want? Skeletonized triggers and hammers, and there's a lot that goes into these. But just expect to spend money with these things, and if you buy one, expect to pay more attention to that gun than pretty much any other modern gun. Even modern guns like this modern 1911 from Springfield Armory still takes a little bit more care and attention to make sure that it's running well and reliably for the life of the gun. The flip side to that is there are very few guns with single action triggers that rival this. So they are fantastic shooters, great competition guns. This will probably lead to a 2011 rabbit hole for you as well. So again, it could start with something as simple as, a Springfield or Kimber or whatever gun you decide, and then that could lead into a lot more from there. So just keep that in mind. The 1911, I don't know of anybody that owns just one of them. And anybody that does own 1, 2, or 10 knows that there's a little bit more love and attention, a little bit more TLC that goes into this gun than your others. And the last gun I want to talk about is the Scar. This is a gun that's recognizable. A lot of people like it. I really like it. This gun shines when you take it and you compare it to other 308s. One of the worst guns that I've ever shot is the PTR 91, right? G3. They just really suck to shoot. One of the best old school 308s I've ever shot is the FAL. One of the new production 308s that I've shot that's really good is the SFAR. There's a lot of them actually, but when it comes to the semi-auto world and a gun that even non-gun people recognize, especially if you play any kind of video games or anything like that, the Scar is instantly recognizable. And you'll find yourself maybe being a little snobbish towards other 308s that you shoot. But again, I say that only if you shoot them compared to other 308s at the same time. Because part of me thinks that, it's like, man, there's a lot of great components on this gun, but not everything is perfect on here. But when I shot this gun, or my Scar 17, compared to the PTR 91 especially, I really understood how smooth a 308 can be and how painful and just irritating a 308 can be in the wrong platform. Roller delay blowback is great in the MP5, the SP5, not so great in the G3. I just want to throw that out there. But Germans are the same ones that shot 8mm Mauser out of G43s and K43s and K98s, so they're kind of used to that, I imagine, but still, at the same time, this is the 308 you want in a semi-auto platform if you want a very, very smooth gun. And so it may warp your perception a little bit on other 308s once you actually shoot this. Now, in no way am I saying you have to spend Scar money to get the results that some cheaper options may offer you. For instance, let's say you have 300 yards or 400 yards available to you, right? Maybe even 500. And you want to save a little bit of money. And you're like, dude, I just want a good 308 AR platform gun. The SFAR is incredible. The FAL, another, not something you're going to see every day in a gun shop. I saw one and I bought it because I just thought it was freaking awesome. But that one was like $800. And that's one of the best shooting 308s I have. The SFAR, again, is a great modern platform. But if you just want an ultra smooth semi-auto and one that can reach out even further, it has the cool factor. And this one specifically, the 20, has a fantastic trigger in it. adjustable cheek rests, adjustable length of pull. It is just a freaking amazing gun, and we were only allowed to shoot this gun at 300 yards when I took it to the range the first time because they had some limitations just because of some stuff going on there behind them, and I literally felt like it wasn't fair. I mean, this thing was just ding, 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 ding. Actually, at one point, everybody left the range, and so there were 6 targets in the middle. They were 8x12s at 300 yards. Boom, 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 come back, boom, boom, boom. It was just easy. And this gun is just incredibly smooth. The non-reciprocating version is even smoother, and I really love the Scar platform. I really do. They're stupid expensive. I think they're too much money, but I really, really like this platform. So there you go. There are 7 guns that you're going to regret for one reason or another. I'd love to hear some of the ones that y'all have regretted for good, bad, or indifferent reasons. Let me know down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.